My name is Martina Ayala, and I am the Executive Director of the Mission Cultural Center for Latino Arts. Over a period of more than 4 decades, Misión Gráfica has produced posters on a wide range of political and cultural events. It has made alliances with an outstanding array of artists from around the world, and especially across Latin America, becoming the most significant political poster center in the San Francisco Bay Area. Misión Gráfica was the outgrowth of Mission Cultural Center's graphics department, which had produced artwork at the Mission Cultural Center since 1977. Mission Cultural Center Graphics Department was founded by Alfonso Maciel and had produced artwork at the Mission Cultural Center since 1977. In 1982, Misión Gráfica was created as an outgrowth of the Mission Cultural Center's graphic department. The joint efforts of René Castro, a political refugee from the coup in Chile, and Jos Sanchez, a Vietnam War draft resistor with a base in commercial printing, was the onset of this amazing movement and amazing collection that you're going to be seeing in this exhibit. In 1982, Misión Gráfica was created as an outgrowth of the Mission Cultural Center's graphic department. Through the joint efforts of René Castro, a political refugee from the coup in Chile, and Jos Sanchez, a Vietnam War draft resistor with a base in commercial printing, we bring you this amazing collection of prints. Castro's brilliant graphic design melded with Sanchez's technical mastery to create the expertise and graphic sensibility that came to define a new, more aesthetically engaged form of screen print. The output of over 40 years of screen print posters and prints created at Misión Gráfica is uncountable. During the 1990s, Misión Gráfica was reformulated under the direction of Juan Fuentes, who emphasized community projects and classes. He created a more open workshop that served artists exploring personal visions as well as political expression. Fuentes began the task of archiving the extensive collection of work that has been set aside at Gráfica. Fuentes uses his broad knowledge of the archived works at Misión Gráfica to present this exhibition of prints reflecting an enormous variety of styles, approaches, and sensibilities. In addition to the principal artists that worked and taught at Misión Gráfica, Jos Sanchez, René Castro, Calixto Robles, Alejandra Blum, and Juan Fuentes, the works of many other artists ranging from non-professional and emerging artists to well-known figures such as Nancy Hom, Juan Alicia, Esther Hernandez, Michael Roman, Jesus Barraza, Isaías Mata, Tirso Araiza, and Josefina Jaquín, and the San Francisco Print Collective are displayed in dialogue with one another across the span of over 40 years. All right, first of all, I want to take a moment to reflect on what is happening here right now in this theater. This is the first of a series of living art history lectures that we are going to be hosting at Mission Cultural Center. In our audience, we have 4 generations of history makers. You know, I went to UC Berkeley and studied, had my, Chicano studies at that time in the 80s. And back then in the 80s, they were making history, and so I didn't get to read about them. And, the films and the articles are just starting to come out now. So a lot of the young people that we have in the audience that are ethnic studies majors, that are Chicano studies majors, art majors, have this great privilege to be sitting in the same room with the people that have created history. You're not going to get this information anywhere else because the books haven't been written yet. We are making history today by documenting, by celebrating and paying homage to the iconic leaders, activists, artivists that transformed our world and made our world richer. And it's a true honor to have everyone here present, because there's iconic people sitting in the audience, and I'm honored to have these two amazing people here sitting to my left. So we're going to start off with, I'm going to ask, I started here as the executive director about a year and 3 or 4 months ago. And when I came here, I would just cry because I knew what I was looking at. Every time I would walk the halls and I would see art, sometimes I saw art that wasn't really being cared for as much as it should have been. It would break my heart, because I understand the struggle of my people. And I understand how difficult it is to break through those, forget the glass ceiling, break through the brick walls. Just like Juan Fuentes was told that he didn't belong, I was told the same thing too. When I went to Berkeley, I remember walking in and I was the only brown girl, and the Nobel Prize winner that I had as an instructor said, "What are you doing here? Berkeley City College is down the street. You're in the wrong place." That's how I was greeted at UC Berkeley in 1980. We didn't belong. And we had to cut through all of that and survive, and we all have a story of resilience here to celebrate. A triumphant history that we have to share with the younger generation. So I'd like to ask Juan, when I saw the work, I said we have to do something with Misión Gráfica, and it was just my mission to reset it. And then it coincided with the fact that Juan came and visited, and he brought me the book that is now available, that they self-published, that should have been published internally, but they self-published a book to tell their own history. It's so important for us to tell our people's history and to support filmmakers like Inspira Films that are trying to tell the stories of our people, to support artists that are publishing their own work, to support all of the people that are trying to make history and record history at the same time, because it's really, really important that we do that for ourselves. No one's going to do that for us. We need to value and pay homage to our own people. And that's what we're about here at Mission Cultural Center. So I thought it was appropriate to have this exhibit that not only honors the printmakers from Misión Gráfica, but that honors the people from Mission Cultural Center Graphics Department, like Alfonso Maciel and others that had a commercial printmaking studio up there, and who printed posters as well, and who also did a lot of newspapers. Tecolote was also printed there, a series of neighborhood newsletters and programs. And out of that printmaking history, Misión Gráfica came, and prior to that, La Raza silkscreen prints. When they lost their building, they were invited to print at Mission Cultural Center's Gráfica department. And then later, we had 2 people that came and really transformed Misión Gráfica, and that was Jos Sanchez and René Castro. And we will hear a little bit about, I want to know, if you could please explain, how did you come to the Mission Cultural Center, and how did it all begin?
Well, my story is really different from yours and Juan's, where you were being pushed out, and I came here as a white guy and was totally accepted. And I worked here for 8 years. I had a lot of screen print experience, and I also had a political background, which allowed Renee and I to work really closely together. He was a Chilean exile who had just been in the United States for a few years. He spent 2 years in Pinochet's prison and was tortured. And he was, as you can see from his work, he was an absolutely brilliant graphic artist. He's moved back to Chile. He's finally getting some recognition in Chile as an older guy. He's up at a big show at the National Museum this fall. So,
Can you speak closer to the microphone?
how's that?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm not good at this. But at any rate, that's kind of my story. I came here actually to take a class, and I ended up talking to Renee for about 8 hours, and we decided we wanted to try to start a workshop.
Wonderful. And I understand that you were, I've heard stories about how Gráfica got started, and we recently cleaned up, Gráfica, and we painted a lot of the tables. I mean, everything had pretty much remained the same as the time that you and Renee were here. And I thought it was time for a little facelift. And we heard some really amazing stories about how the machines came to be, how the equipment, the presses. Can you tell us a little bit about how you acquired the equipment that was used to make these posters and that we continue to use?
Renee and I basically collected most of the equipment up there with our own expenses, or from when we would print a poster, we would get some kind of a little stipend from somebody, and so we would save it, and so we basically bought it. But the story that I know you want to hear is that I was working in a commercial screen print shop out in Concord, and I commuted out to Concord to work there, and so I quit to work full-time at Mission Gráfica, and I had a good relationship with the old boss. So I knew he had a semi-automatic screen print press that he wanted to get rid of. So we offered to buy it. We went out, borrowed a truck, went out there and picked it up, and Renee wrote him a check, and we got the press. The next day I got a frantic call from my old boss that the check bounced. And Renee said, well, I didn't have enough to cover it. And eventually we did pay for the press, and we printed thousands and thousands of posters.
Hence the collection that we have today. Thank you for sharing that story. And Juan Fuentes, when did you come into Mission Cultural Center? What was your role?
Ooh, when did I come in? That's why I have notes, because I don't remember everything. But, I was here from 1999 to 2009. Or was I? Yeah. Well, anyway, I came here because I had been teaching at City College at the Mission campus, and I was teaching in the print department there. And I already had ties with the Mission Gráfica since its inception, because I would come back and forth. And I knew Renee, I knew Joss. They printed, sometimes I used to print kind of on my own, but I didn't have a studio at that time. I was living in an apartment. So I needed a place to print, and sometimes I needed to have stuff printed. And because artists were called upon by community organizations to do posters, we had to have some place to print them. And like they printed the World Women's Conference poster in 1985 that I, designed, and it was partly due to, Michelle being part of the Alliance Against Women's Oppression, and then they invited me to do, and I did a couple of different posters for them around South Africa, and so I was able to do posters for community organizations and international organizations. But because I was at the Mission campus, and in the 90s, when I left after 10 years at teaching at the print studio there, everything was shifting to computers. We used to do everything by hand, all the typesetting, the layout, everything was hand done. And then they were shifting to computers, and they were going to teach us and to train us so that we could teach others. And that's when I stepped away. I was like, no, that's not for me. And Calixto, got a hold of me, and basically the Mission Gráfica had been closed for a while. Nobody was there. Renee had left. And anyway, they talked me into running the Mission Gráfica. So I ended up there. But when I got there, I had to make some other changes because, first of all, when I get there, the social movements things had already shifted. A lot of the organizations and the social movements that were going on had moved on, and there wasn't the need for the posters. And also, because people had their computers, they could do a lot of stuff in-house, so they didn't need to come and have somebody to pay somebody to do it. So I shifted the emphasis of Mission Gráfica from, we were still doing some posters for people, but basically I shifted it more to an educational component for the community. So teaching youth, Alejandra Bloom was, teaching students from Drew High School. I had a workshop that I did for an open class for students to come in, and it was free. Calixto was doing students from Horace Mann, and then we had the adult classes. So I shifted everything, and I also had to shift the inks and the chemicals, because when I got here, we were still using oil-based inks. And the prints that came out during that time period when Joss was here working and all that, they're absolutely beautiful because of those rich inks that were done with solvent-based inks. But I couldn't have students working here, and it wasn't healthy anymore. So I shifted to water-based, and the quality of the water-based wasn't really too good at that time, but it's gotten a lot better. It's better now. So anyway, that was kind of the shift.
So that was critical. You came in at a period when technology was starting to come in and change the nature, that communal nature. People would come here to print their posters for events, and in that process, they also created community. I know Nancy Hom mentioned how exciting it was to work in Gráfica, because you would be working side by side with other artists, and you would inspire each other, learn from each other, kind of like, really feed each other's creative inspiration. And you created a sense of community as well, and helped each other create these posters. It was also a time of political change, and women were also coming into their own and saying, we can't be pushed out. We need a space. And a lot of the men that were working in Gráfica were also being challenged to shift and the way they thought about women and how they treated women in the art world. So there's that story that hasn't been told, and we're going to be getting to that story at another time. But it's very important that we tell that story, because women of the movimiento were critical, and their story has yet to be told and given the appropriate attention. But moving right along, I think one of the things that there's a couple things that Juan did that were critical. One was he made printmaking accessible to everyone, people of all ages, children, youth, elders. Everyone could come and learn printmaking. It's art for the people. It's the people's art. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's a tradition that we want to continue to honor here at Mission Cultural Center. And we are not going to stop teaching people how to make things by hand, regardless of the technology that we have available. We are also going to be integrating both technology and the hand printmaking skills, because together they also create something new and different and valuable. There's something else that Juan did that I think I'm very grateful for. Can you tell us about where you found the posters, the collection that we have now? Or there were a couple collections.
Well, there were two things that were going on here. One is that there was an attempt to archive the work, before I got here. It was being collected, and it was put in drawers, and that was the works of Mission Gráfica. But it wasn't complete. It was just had been started. The other thing that happened was that I went into the basement because I was looking for something that I needed up at Mission Gráfica, and so I was looking in the basement for something. And I found the La Raza silkscreen posters in the basement in the cabinets up there. And then I was asking, what are they down here for? And I think somebody from that was here at the time said that they were going to get ready to toss all of that stuff out. And I was like, no way. So I ended up securing a room that was up in the second floor, third floor, I think, that was used to, just to store junk. So I cleaned it out, and I ended up putting all the Mission Gráfica works that had already been kind of collected and somewhat semi-archived. I moved them into that room, and I moved all the La Raza silkscreen things that were left there, and I moved them into that room, and I put a lock and key to it. Later, we were able to, with Jenny, the previous director that was here, Jenny Rodriguez, we were able to get a small grant to begin an archive, and they hired this woman, Gianna Capecci, who was a professional archivist who came in, and I worked with her, and we hired another artist, Mariana Galibay, who had just come to Mission Gráfica and was one of those people who just, came to us as an artist and wanted to participate. And anyway, she was trained by Gianna to document the works, and then that kind of started the archival process for Mission Gráfica, and that's kind of what I was able to do.
There's one other important thing that happened was the Library of Congress came here, the director of head of prints, and from Juan and my collection, they got over 1,000 prints. I think they have about 1,200 now. And they actually have digitized them all online, which is very rare for them. They usually don't do that. So we were lucky enough that we had really a very complete collection that's now at the Library of Congress.
And yeah, we also were SEMA, Santa Barbara Library purchased the initial collection. And so they have a complete set of whatever was available to at that point of sale. So they have a collection. Unfortunately, they returned the extras, but they didn't return the onesies. Like, they kept everything, and they wouldn't let us borrow it because they didn't think that they felt that we didn't have the appropriate gallery or experience to handle our own work.
Well, because one of the things that happened was that the Mission Gráfica works were archived. Mm-hmm. So they had those copies. They initially, when I worked with Sal Guerna, who's the head of the SEMA there, when he wanted those works, we were supposed to sell those. They weren't supposed to take both works. They were only supposed to take the La Raza Graphics works and take, a copy and then bring the rest back. But they ended up, because I had already left Mission Gráfica, I wasn't here when they did that negotiation.
I have the records.
They ended up taking both of them for the price of one. So they got a really good deal, but we got some of it back.
But actually, I have the records and I have the notes, and there was an agreement with the artist and also the purchase. So they did take both, and it was part of the deal. What is happening now with this amazing collection is, when I first started, the first week, Bancroft Library came and they want to buy the collection. And, we've been going through a very busy transitional year given the looming relocation. And they recently, came in and they started archiving the work. And then I started seeing, we have to learn from our history. What happened back then with Santa Barbara was happening again. And I had to put a stop to it because we're not in the same place. I'm very fortunate that we got a grant from the Haas Foundation, and I am so proud to announce that next week we will have our very own historical archival files. We will have a room that's temperature controlled. I would say that 99% of the staff that is currently working here has been trained in archiving, and also they're also learning printmaking so that everyone that works here knows the value of prints. And we are poised for a sale, but I'm not in a rush because it's very, very important for us to appraise the work and to give the artists the work and to value the work that we have in front of us. That model of selling things because we don't have money, the scarcity model, that doesn't work here. We don't need a rush. We need to do things right. And if it takes time, it takes time. This is our treasure, and we have to protect it. And for those of you that are young, sometimes you're creating history and you don't know that you're creating history. These men were creating history and they didn't know that they were history makers.
We never imagined our work would end up at the Library of Congress, ever.
Right, and which is another reason why they were going to throw out, all the prints. They were going to throw out the gold because they didn't know that the work that they were doing had value. So it's very important for this generation to know, first of all, to know your history. You're not going to read this in a book. Well, you'll read some of it in their book, but not all of it, because it hasn't been fully published, and there's still some citations that are missing that we will get in the next book that we're publishing.
Martina, could I don't want to interrupt you, but could I just list some of the artists that came to Mission Gráfica?
Yes, please do.
Because I think it's important for people to and I don't have them all, but I got as many as I could. I'm just gonna start. They're not in any kind of alphabetical order, but I'm gonna let you know because there's a lot of people that came through. So I'll start out with Juana Alicia, Tirso Araiza, Jesus Barraza, Rene Castro, Enrique Chagoya, Francisco Dominguez, Amilca, Rupert Garcia, Mariana Garibay, Ricardo Gato Garcia, Carmen Ramos Garza, Rafael Gonzalez, Esther Hernandez, Gonzalo Hidalgo, Nancy Hom, Josefina Joaquin Bates, Jean Lamar, Francisco Latayer, Isaías Mata, Mario Rosales, Gilberto Osario, Patricia Rodriguez, Linda Lucero, Alfonso Maciel, Paul Owens the Saber, Irene Perez, Patrick Piazza, Dina Redman, Calixto Robles, Michael Roman, Fabiano Rodriguez, John Sanchez, Art Hazelwood, San Francisco Print Collective, Marcia Shaw, Herbert Sequenza, Rene Yanes, Tony Carranza, Daniel Galvez, and the Nueve Mujeres project that I worked on with 9 women, Susana Aragon, Maria Bartolo Mejia, Amy Diaz-Infante, Carolina Lucero, Gabriela Luján, Mónica Martínez, Viviana Paredes, Michelle Ramirez, and Anna Simpson. So that's who I get to hang out with, and that's who I was able to work with and meet. Thanks to Josh and Renee, really, for setting it up, and Maciel for starting it and getting something here. I was here at the very beginning before there was Mission Gráfica because El Tecolote newspaper was, used to be published upstairs. We used to do the layout there, and Pilar Mejia was here, and her brother Manuel Mejia, they all worked with El Tecolote newspaper. We were up there. We were up at Mission Gráfica before Mission Gráfica. So it has a big history. Tintan was up there, Cochoche, Maciel. I don't know, we can go on, but that's where it started. So I mean, this is my heart and soul, this place.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one thing, because I think what's been consistent in the Mission Gráfica and when there was just a workshop or whatever, is that there's been a global orientation to art and artists, and that's what sets Mission Gráfica very much apart from other and workshops that focus mainly on Chicanos, or, so in some ways, what was done here was the unexpected. Nobody thought, it was a hothouse of different people, and it reflected the community. There's not just Chicanos, and the community keeps changing. And so it addressed people from El Salvador and all these other places, all of Central America, Africa, Europe, and beyond. People really came here because they were welcomed, and it's always been that way. It's not, it just started. Look at Joss and Renee as the founders of it. A lot of people would see that as worlds apart. It's not possible, but it continued to grow with the community, and that's why it expresses such radical ideas that are not always accepted in the broader thing, because it's not the work that people think are supposed to come out of this community. But that's really powerful. And the movements that were represented over the years of poster making and the collective process, really revolutionary. So I just think that's been consistent over every regime or every bit of.
That is the multicultural, the diversity of the political and cultural work that is represented in this collection is amazing. And we need to continue that, because we are a very rich, diverse community. And this is the Mission Cultural Center for Latino Arts, because a lot of the art, does emphasize the Latino culture, but in the collection, it's San Francisco history, it's world history. And the figures that came to this center were from all over the world, and they would come here to find support through the arts. We had Rigoberta Menchú, Ernesto Cardenal. The leaders from all over would come here for support, and also to educate the community on political consciousness. This was the center of political consciousness during that period.
I think there's been a few books that were written about printmaking, in political printmaking in California, and Alliance Graphics was pretty much overlooked or given very short shrift. And I think part of it was because we weren't easy to categorize. We weren't just a Chicano print shop, and that there was a kind of internationalism that just happened naturally there. And this really is true. We had people from every continent print there, from the Philippines, Africa, all over. And many of them with same political struggles that were going on in Central America that people were more familiar with. And I think, again, it reflects in the collection. One thing that Juan and I were just talking about, the book is out, and I think there's some...
We have it for sale here.
And we're pleased with it. It's not perfect. There's things we find out that we got wrong, but not too much. We took us 10 years to do, and it was difficult to get everyone to sign off on it, as you can imagine. And there is a show, another show that's going to go to the San Francisco Public Library, and then Exhibit Envoy, which is a nonprofit art touring group. It's going to go to 4 other venues in California, I think 1 in Colorado. So hopefully it's going to tour around, and the work will be seen by a bigger audience.
Yes, and we have a show that is opening at the San Francisco Art Gallery. It's going to be a very comprehensive show, much larger than what we have here. It is going to incorporate the La Raza silk screen prints as well as the Misión Gráfica prints and the Mission Cultural Center collection. And that show is going to open on September 12th at City Hall. So if you go to I believe it's the floor where the electoral office is, it's a very long hallway. We're going to be doing, exhibiting prints that were printed from the 60s through present day. And the Mission Cultural Center, Graphics Department, and Gráfica Department are going to be honored at City Hall this year. We're also going to be exhibiting in one of the largest museums in San Francisco, which is the SFO Museum. So there's going to be a print collection there that's going to be up for about 2 years. And we are also working with other major museums in the country that are going to be exhibiting this work. So we are just getting started. And thank you so much for making this happen. There's a lot of history, and like I said, this is the first of a series of living art history. We want to make ethnic studies and cultural art history available to our community. There are many members of our community that don't have access to the university because of different situations. Maybe they're undocumented or they're just not, college isn't their thing. But we all want to learn history, and we all want to learn directly from you. And we are going to be inviting artists and history makers of our community to come in, and we will be producing this documentary series of podcasts, and we are also going to start working on that scholarly academic book that is going to document our own history by our own scholars that are among us. So thank you very much for coming. We are now going to be going upstairs, and I want to talk a little bit about what you're going to see upstairs. Besides this amazing collection that Juan curated and put up, we invited poets, some that were poets here in the 70s, and others that are coming here for the first time. We asked poets and visual artists to go and look at the exhibit and to select one poster that inspired them. And just like in Juan's film, your artwork was reinterpreted in mosaic tile, we are reinterpreting the posters that have been created through poetry and visual design, fashion design, because we've printed dresses, t-shirts, jackets, inspired by the posters. So you will have a chance to meet some of the young artists of this generation, as well as some of the older ones that are coming together to pay homage to all of you who have done such an amazing job. We're so proud that you're here with us. Thank you.
Thank you.